Hey everyone, DCB here again. Today I'm going to stop by the 605 Antique Mall here in Sioux Falls where I live. It's actually a pretty decently sized and well-stocked mall for the area. I used to rent a small spot there for a while to sell some of my extra collectibles that I had packed up and brought with me when I moved here a couple years ago. Um, I'm not as hardcore of a shopper these days as I spend most of my time in my workshop. And Sioux Falls isn't exactly a hotbed for the best vintage tchotchkes, but I still stop here maybe every 2 or 3 months, and I always find something interesting to me. So let's see what they have today. This giant Band-Aid box is sort of interesting, but not quite enough. Plus, it's pretty scratched up. They've had this land speeder up here for a while. I'm not sure if it's like a pedal car or some sort of Power Wheels. I don't think it's for sale though, but it's kind of neat. Here's a couple of blow mold figures of Top Cat and Fancy Fancy. This is from a bowling set that also included Benny, but he's not here. They're $15 each, and it's not a super bargain, but I like them, so I think I'll pick them up. I'm not sure what the deal is with this touring car van, but the graphics are pretty great. But for $75 though, I think I'll pass. My wife has been eyeing this owl painting for a while. It's $150, and I might have to get that for her next time I have some extra cash laying around if it's still there. These Wheatie boxes have been here for a while, and they're fairly priced, but it's rare to find any sort of vintage cereal box out in the wild, but these are a tad too old and boring for me. This is kind of a fun thing that I don't stumble upon much these days. An original Kenner 12-inch Stormtrooper action figure, or doll, or whatever you want to call it. He's pretty rough though, and his joints are pretty loose, but it sure looks like he'd be pretty fun to restore. And he's only $12, so if I mess it up, it won't be a huge loss. So that's all I got here today. Not terrible. Shopping at antique stores in Sioux Falls is nowhere near as fruitful as it was back home in Minneapolis, but that's okay. I don't need to be buying so much anyway these days. Anyway, back home to fix this Stormtrooper. So here's a list of his issues. He's missing his two hands, obviously, and the white plastic is really scuffed and dirtied and yellowed, which is quite common for these. And there's some paint rubbed off and a couple chips in the plastic, and his arm and shoulder and leg joints are really loose, and he's missing the little string holster and his laser rifle, but all this should be fairly easy to remedy. The good news though is that he doesn't have any plastic melt on him, which can be pretty common, especially around the wrists where the rubbery hard plastic kind of reacts with the harder white plastic. I've been watching several different videos over the years on how to remove the yellowing from plastic. It's called retrobrighting. There's a couple different methods you can do. Some people like to use a hydrogen peroxide based hair bleach that they'll brush on the piece, but this can sometimes leave uneven brush strokes. And others will just buy some regular drugstore peroxide and fill a tub with it and then completely submerge their item in it for a while. But I'm going to try this vapor method that I found. All these methods require a UV light to activate the peroxide. You can buy a variety of UV lights online or just use the big free UV light in the sky. Back in the shop, and the first thing I need to do is find space for TC and Fancy on my cubby shelf. I rearranged some stuff and found a fine spot for them up here by the Puzzle Puppy. As for the Trooper, I will need to completely disassemble him before whitening. He's got 5 screws on his back here that are pretty rusted, so I'm just going to work those out and be careful not to strip out the plastic or the screw heads. I thought the body would come, apart pretty easily at this point, but I think there's some more internal pins and sockets inside that are kind of holding him together still. So I'll just slowly and carefully work around him with a flathead screwdriver and these plastic wedges I use for fiberglass molds. And there he goes. It wasn't too bad. The screws can just sit in this jar of vinegar for a while and think about what they've done. Before I whiten him, I think I better get these scuff marks off him. The magic eraser is making quick work of that. It's also starting to remove some of the yellowing, but not quite all the way. Now I'll put him on the lid of this tote on some risers and then fill the bottom up with just enough 12% hydrogen peroxide to fill the lid. I got this off Amazon. This is stronger than your standard medical drugstore peroxide, which is like 3%. The store-bought stuff will work fine, but this is stronger and faster. You can get an even stronger blend of like 40%, but that requires, a special license or getting it on the dark web or something. I don't know. Now I'll just set this on a table in my driveway and let the sun and the peroxide do its thing for a few hours. I decided to add some adhesive insulation foam around the edge of the tote to make it more airtight. You can buy totes that have a rubber gasket, but I don't have one of those at the moment, so this should work. You should really wear gloves and goggles while handling this peroxide, unlike me, as it can leave chemical burns on your skin. I noticed it left like a white residue on my fingers and it burned a little bit. It's not too bad, but don't be like me and wear some gloves. After just a few minutes, you can already see the peroxide condensation sort of collect on the tote. 6 hours later and he already has dramatically whitened up. There's a few spots, especially on his back here, that have some yellow streaks. So I'm going to do a second run in the morning. The arms and legs are looking really good though. The peroxide does lose its potency after being in the sun all day, so I'm just going to dump it out and pour a fresh batch in tomorrow. But even though it has been degraded, it's still quite potent. Check out what it does to the dirt here where I dumped it. More signs that it's pretty crazy stuff that you really should be careful with.
And the day is dawning and here is the sun. Hail His Majesty the Sun.
The next morning I'm going to repeat this process. I only have enough peroxide in the bottle to add just a little bit to the lid, but hopefully that'll be enough to kind of finish off the job. After a few more hours in the sun, I'm going to bring it inside to see what I got. I think this is just about as good as it's going to get. Plus I'm out of peroxide. I have to say though, these look pretty fantastic. There's still a little bit of discoloring on the seam of the legs, but that's kind of to be expected because of the glue that they used for the legs. Now I'll bring them inside and give them a washing and see if I can get some more of the marks off it with magic eraser. The plastic got a tad bit dull, probably mostly from the magic eraser, which is actually almost like a very fine grit sandpaper. So I'm going to add a touch of shine back to him with this Novus plastic polish. Who on earth could that be? This package is from my pal Kevin. Wonder what it could be. Oh, how nice. He lent me his original laser rifle. And trooper hands to make molds off of. Thanks, Kevin. I'll take good care of them and send them back as soon as possible. Now I'm going to touch up his paint. I'm just going to use some Rust-Oleum spray paint in black. Glossy is just a little too glossy, and flat is a little too flat. But satin seems to be the sheen that Goldilocks would pick. So I'll just spray a little bit in a cup here and then start brushing away. Now I'm going to repair the chips in the plastic with some white epoxy putty. This is a 2-part 1-to-1 ratio that you knead together until it's thoroughly mixed. Then I'll just work it with some dental tools. If you dip your tools in water every so often, it kind of helps smooth it out. You get about 30 minutes of work time, and it'll be fully cured and sandable in 24 hours. I bought a 330-foot spool of 0.8 millimeter nylon string for his holster for like $7, but I'm only going to use a few inches of it. That's fine. I'll just have a lifetime supply of thick black nylon string, I guess. I cut off about 9 inches of string to make a 4-inch loop. When you put it back into the body, be sure to loop it around the 2 pegs in the front half of the body, and then when putting the back half on, have the thread go through the 2 smaller holes on the side. There should be just enough loop sticking out that you can easily hang his laser rifle in it. And yes, I'm going to continue to refer to his blaster as a laser rifle because that's what it says on the box. To fix his loose joints, I had the idea of putting small rubber bands around his sockets. I don't know if this is a technique anyone else has done. I haven't really checked, but I'm going to try it anyway. These are just some small 1/2-inch diameter rubber bands from the dollar store. They come in a variety of colors, and fortunately there's more than enough white ones in the pack. I'm just going to wrap it around and I'll do a test fit. And it actually works pretty great. The legs are stiff enough to stand, yet I can still move them. This probably wouldn't be the best solution if you're going to play with him or whatever, or move the joints numerous times, but for standing on a shelf, this is just fine. Now it's time to make a mold of his hands and laser rifle. I custom designed and printed these mold boxes to more efficiently use the silicone. And then I designed and printed these air vents and pour spouts. I'm going to start with the laser rifle. I'll glue the vents on with hot glue so I won't damage the original piece. Now I'll take some clean clay and build up a barrier on half of the laser rifle. I want to get it nice and tight around it with a nice flat edge, and then I'll add in some registration keys once I have all the clay in there. I put the second half of the mold box on, and then I'll pour the silicone and let that cure overnight. Now I can flip the box over and remove all that clay, but I'm going to need to add a barrier to the first layer of silicone so that the second silicone pour doesn't stick to that. And for that, I'm going to brush on a mixture of Vaseline and mineral spirits. Now I'll pour the second silicone half and let that sit overnight as well. In the morning, both sides have been fully cured and I can remove the original piece. As you can see, the piece was not damaged in the least. I'm going to use smooth on black onyx resin for the laser rifle casting, so I won't have to paint it or anything. This resin kicks in really fast, so I have to be extra speedy with the mixing and pouring. The air vents that I put in throughout the piece really help the resin, get into all the corners and make a nice casting. And I'm also going to put it in a pressure pot to help remove any more trapped air bubbles that might be in it. The hand mold is a similar molding process, but I'm going to cast them in Smooth On KX Flex 90, which is a hard yet semi-flexible rubber. I tinted part B of the resin with a black So Strong pigment so that the castings will be black and I won't have to paint them. They actually came out pretty nice. They have a good flex to them, but they're not so weak that he can't hold his rifle. I'm going to hit them with the heat gun for a few seconds here to soften up the rubber so I can push them back into the arms. And they snap in perfectly. I'm just going to paint the back of his hand plate with a satin white. And here's the completed piece. He's not 100% never played with mint and box perfect, but he's pretty dang good for a 47-year-old white plastic played with toy, and way better than how he started. I'm quite pleased with the results. Now I kind of want to try this on other vintage toys I have. Thanks everyone for coming along on this journey with me. It was pretty fun, and it's always good to try out new techniques and learn new skills. I hope you learned something too. That's all. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Darn, that's the end.
Thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Dustin Cropsboy. Also check out our TeePublic page for t-shirts you can buy to help support this channel, or just go to the website dcbvarietyhour.com for all the links.